News Radio 910 WSBA.
We head to healthcare. How's that? And there's a huge case today before the Supreme Court. Head-to-head match between the U.S. Solicitor General Donald Verrilli, who was the Obama administration's top lawyer before the court, and Michael Carvin, a lawyer for conservative and corporate causes who has guided two health law lawsuits to the high court, though I don't know if he's won either one of them yet. The justices are in the case of King versus Burwell are considering a legal challenge to the tax credits in the 2010 law that's defining the domestic achievement of President Barack Obama. And what the court is going to decide here is whether language in the law allows the credits to go to lower and middle income individuals across the country or is limited to people in states currently operating health insurance exchanges. And the distinction is kind of important because only 13 states in the District of Columbia currently operate an exchange, while more than 30 states, somewhere in the neighborhood of 36, are relying on the federal government's healthcare.gov system. With us this morning is Ed Hodgson, health benefits experts, to talk about this case and just what might happen, all the ifs, ands, or buts. And Ed, great to have you back on the show this morning. Good morning to you.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having me back on.
Ed, you know, this is really an interesting case, and I know people who don't like Obamacare basically say, well, if this wins, this will shoot down Obamacare, it'll take out all the money. On the other side, you have the president, for example, saying, I don't have any backup plan because we're going to win the case. So far, the Supreme Court has been fairly deferential in the cases that they have judged with regard to the Affordable Care Act, and we saw that particularly with the mandate, and of course, Chief Justice Roberts said it's not a mandate, it's tax, and they have the right to tax, so therefore Congress can put this in. What do you make of this case today?
Well, I think, both sides obviously have an argument. The reality is if subsidies go away, it's estimated that roughly 5.3 to 5.5 million people are going to lose that subsidy, and these are people that reside in those 36 states that you mentioned. And, if that were to happen, they would not be able to afford the coverage that they have. It's so expensive to, the rest of us. And so it could have a catastrophic impact on, the 85% of us that are paying regular market price for our health coverage. So the immediate impact would be, and what this case is centered on is really 6 words that is buried in the law. It says, an exchange established by the state. And so if the courts were to rule against ACA, then those individuals would therefore lose their subsidies.
One of the things that Mr. Carvin is going to make the case on today, if he hasn't already, is if the rule of law means anything, he says, it is that text is not infinitely malleable. In other words, you can't move it around and make it fit to anything, and that agencies must follow the law as written, not revise it to better achieve what they assume to have been Congress's purposes. And he makes a great case there in his court brief, right?
Yeah, I love the word malleable, too, but he does. And so I think, there has been a lot of time and effort and a lot of words written to Health and Human Services about the impact that would result if subsidies were taken away. And so if you think about it, if the ACA was built on the foundation, supposedly, right, based on the title of the law, Affordable Care Act, that health insurance premiums were going to be more affordable for everyone. That certainly hasn't been the case. And just to reiterate, I'm a benefits consultant. We help organizations build cost containment strategies and educate their employees to be better consumers of health care. And so, I don't have, a direct opinion on sort of what the basis of this is going to be. But the impact, is that there's a lot of emphasis on Justice Roberts. He tends to lean a little bit further to the right. And so in the last case that you referenced in 2012, that was a case about the individual mandate. That ruling was close. It was 5-4. It was very close.
And Justice Roberts was a deciding, the deciding vote in that.
Yeah, correct. And so in this instance, what is transpiring right now is that if the courts were to rule against subsidies, therefore subsidies will be taken away, there would have to be, and this is what the Republicans are talking about, because they need it as well. In such states like Ohio, swing states, the two Republicans there, Kasich and Portman, if subsidies went away, it would have a huge impact on their states. They've had a very successful expansion of Medicaid. They've had a very successful number of their middle class that have gone through the exchange. And if those were taken away, people are going to be looking at them for an answer. And so my guess is, again, my opinion doesn't really matter that much, is that there would have to be some transition period. The light switch would not be thrown off, and that there would be some form of a COBRA or a transition where the federal government imposed their muscle, their flex, their influence to get the 34 to 36 states that haven't established a state exchange to begin that process to ensure that subsidies, whether a tax credit or an offset, would remain in place.
Yeah, so Republicans, have as much pressure on them in this as do Democrats, because Republicans have to have something in place should this come down, and it'll come down probably in June. As far as the ruling's concerned, today's the argument of the case, but in June is when it's going to come down. Republicans better have something in place. I saw a number this morning that really jumped out at me, that for a family of four who are getting subsidies, that could amount to $97,000 of subsidies taken away if the Supreme Court says that you've got to rule by the law. And in other words, if you're in a state that does not have a state exchange, you don't get that money. Only the 13 states in the District of Columbia do have a state exchange would get that money, and that is what it says in the law. Now, I hear a lot of people say, well, it's just a slip of the word, come on, and so forth. I don't think so. What I've read is that when they pushed this through, they hung that out there to the states as kind of a carrot to get them involved by saying, hey, listen, your people are going to get subsidies if you take this up as your own state exchange. So they knew at one point in time out there that this was the case. So now to come back and try to argue otherwise is kind of a tough one to make, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm not an expert on the Constitution. I should be as an American, but, everything that I've read, based on the wording that's in the Affordable Care Act, individuals, should not be able to receive a tax credit without, in a state that hasn't established an exchange. And so, from that, there's a lot of pressure, on both sides.
Yes.
But what I come back to, it's the case, and oral arguments start today. And you know what? The insurance companies have to file their rates by the end of May in every single state, right? So they have to pre-file the rates that they are going to, for each plan design. And so if the decision comes in June, it goes against subsidies. We have 5.3 or whatever million people come out of the system. And I know nobody cares or worries about the insurance companies and their profitability, but the fact of the matter is that's going to have a huge impact on what you and I and your listeners have to pay for their insurance, because the insurance company can't go back and re-rate or refile those rates. And so, this doomsday effect is that's where a lot of this pressure is coming from. American Heart Association, a lot of nonprofits are saying, listen, to your point, don't interpret it the way it should be, because you're going to impact a lot of people. And so if they are going to rule against subsidies, there does need to be a plan or a transition in place, because I can tell you one thing, we're a firm with less than 50 employees. We're healthy. We try. We know that the only thing that we can do to help, control our own healthcare costs is to try and take better care of ourselves.
Proactive, yeah.
Yeah, we got a 41% rate increase under the new Affordable Care Act underwriting guidelines.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
I can't imagine if subsidies go away, we can't afford another 40% rate increase.
So it's not an if. You better have something ready to put in there so they go down. And, the president said yesterday, I don't really have a backup plan because I know we'll win the case. I don't know if the American people are going to feel real calm about that either. We'll have to wait and see. We've got a call. We got Joe in Denver. Joe, you're on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with Ed Hodgson. Go ahead with your question, Joe.
Hey, yeah, my question is, I hear you two talking about we got to support it, come up with something to keep Obamacare in place. Let's get rid of it. Let's go back to the old system. Let those 30.
That's not what we're saying, Joe. That's not what we're saying. What you misinterpreted. What we're saying is, if the subsidy part of it, which is the money part of it, gets taken away, then you have to have something else to put in there, whether it's a new plan or whether it's taking care of the subsidy plan there along the way. That's all we're saying.
Right. Yeah. You're saying the Republicans need to come up with a plan. Actually, what needs to happen is that's all they do is revert back to the old system. You know, the insurance companies sell insurance for people who, well, I want a catastrophic care plan.
Right.
I want this type of plan, that type. And those states abandon Obamacare and they go back to the old method immediately. Not the Republicans come in with a new plan or government comes in with a new plan, but the free marketplace comes back in and we go back to the old.
Well, let me get Ed's reaction to that, because you brought up some really good points there. We've been talking a lot here lately, Ed, about concierge medicine and the idea of a catastrophic plan and then having you and your doctor arrange the price structure. And I've talked to a number of people that are doing that around the country. But you mentioned something a moment ago that was kind of ringing in my ears as Joe was talking, and it's this. You can't just turn around all of a sudden and turn this thing on a dime, can you, with all the people that you have involved in this?
Listen, I couldn't agree more with Joe. This law went into effect March 23rd, 2010. So it's been a law for 5 years. And so as a benefits consultant, a lot of aspects of this law have been delayed. And the ugly part or the hard part of it, it became a reality January 1st of this year. And so I would love nothing more for us to be able to turn the clock back and go where we were, and companies were rated based on their risk, their profile. I think that platform, no system is perfect, right? If you want to talk about the college bowl situation, you don't have to turn something completely upside down on its head to come up with a better solution. You only a lot of times create more problems, and so that's the case here. And I think that going back to the old system would be great, but there's been so much, insurance companies have been given a doctrine that said this is the plans you must offer, this is how you must underwrite it for businesses that are less than 50 employees, which is community rating. This is what you must do from a compliance standpoint. For this year, there's reporting requirements that would make your head spin. The companies that we deal with, the amount of human capital costs, the amount of additional technology costs and time and attendance and tracking hours and tracking employees, it's insane. And so there's so much additional cost that's been built into trying to comply with this law. It's very difficult. And so to Joe's point, it was a much simpler system, and we didn't have to reinvent the wheel to try and allow people to buy insurance even if they were unhealthy, right? There were state pools and taxes that could have been there. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel so everybody could get a free checkup every year. That could have been done without everything that is happening now. So I would love to be able to turn back the clock. But from the standpoint of this law, this is the largest freight train that's ever left the station. And so, in my discussions and talks with congressmen, they're saying, listen, the law is here. There's a lot of unintentional consequences. That's the phrase they keep using that we're going to have to deal with. The important part was they had to, get Harry Reid out of the way because he was going to veto anything. And so we have a very important election coming up in 2016. And so, this is going to be, front and center from a political standpoint. But right now, with this case on a timely basis with the Supreme Court, it's impacting both sides. President Obama says, I don't have a replacement plan because this is my plan. So if it blows up, that's their fault. Let them try and come up with a solution.
We'll find out what happens. Ed, great having you on. Always look forward to hearing your insights, and I'll talk to you again very soon, okay?
Great. Thanks so much, Gary.
Thanks, Ed. Take care. Ed Hodgson with us on the Gary Sutton Show. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about the latest, richest people in the country. Make you feel good about yourself, right? All here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Back right after this.